Gamarjoba from Sanjarvasi. This is the Rorschach, Georgia update from the 19th of September, 2024. Quick summary of what's going down in Georgia. Saturday the 14th, during an event of the Georgian Dream, or Utsneba in Gori, Bidzina Ivanishvili said that Georgia needs to apologize to Ossetians for the 2008 Russo-Georgian War. Since coming to power, Otsneba has been blaming the then ruling party, the United National Movement, or Natsebi, for escalating decades-long but largely frozen conflict with the separatist South Ossetian or Samachablo region into a full-blown war in 2008. Otsneba amplified this narrative as the country prepares for parliamentary elections on the 26th of October, and the ruling party seeks to reaffirm its position as a guarantor of peace with Russia. Ivanishvili promised that after Otsneba's victory, the government would conduct a Nuremberg-style trial to punish everyone responsible for the conflict, meaning the Georgian side, specifically current or former members of the Natsebi party, because that's what we need. Statement caused a massive backlash from both opposition parties and family members of soldiers who died during the Russian invasion. Ivanishvili's statement didn't go unnoticed in South Ossetia. De facto leaders of the separatist region expressed hope that Ivanishvili's statements will not remain just a political narrative, but be followed by actionable steps. In particular, they're demanding that Georgia sign a non-violence agreement, of course, which would prohibit Georgia from using force to restore its jurisdiction in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which are internationally recognized as part of Georgia. Ivanishvili's new rhetoric also received a nod from, you guessed her, Chester, the Kremlin. Georgy Karasin, head of the Russian Foreign Relations Committee in the Duma, stated that Georgia has become more politically mature in the last 16 years, that is, after the 2008 Russo-Georgian War. He said that the hostilities and confrontational rhetoric that Misha Saakashvili, former president, should be replaced by a more reasonable tone oriented on maintaining stability. By stability, he means Russian control. Going back to Otsneba's election talking points, on Tuesday the 17th, the parliament passed anti-LGBTQ plus law in its third and final reading. This is a significant setback for organizing work on minority rights. Even though homophobia is rampant in Georgia, till now it had a relatively progressive legal framework for the protection of minorities, particularly when compared to other countries in the region. Since Otsneba has been trying to consolidate its very conservative voter base for the upcoming elections, it has intensified its homophobic rhetoric and has initiated this legislative package under the guise of protecting family values and children from LGBTQ propaganda. Part of the Kremlin, Viktor Orban, and the U.S. Republican playbook. The new laws prohibit public meetings and demonstrations aimed at promoting same-sex relationships, gender-affirming care, adoption by non-heterosexual people, change of gender on ID cards, among other things. Next, on Monday, the 16th, President Zurabashvili held a briefing at the presidential palace. During her speech, she discussed the historical importance of the upcoming election. She proposed that in order to fully mobilize opposition voters and increase the chances of defeating Otsneba, two opposition parties, Mamuka Khazaradze's Lelo for Georgia and Gogi Gacharia's For Georgia, or Sakartvelos Tvis, should unite into a single party. She invited the party leaders to the presidential palace on the following day to discuss her proposal. While this idea sounds good in theory, there is significant antagonism between the two politicians. Gacharia was one of Otsneba's prime ministers before leaving the party. Khazaradze partially blames him for sabotaging his Anaklia port project, which would have been the first serious deepwater port in Georgia. Khazaradze was unfairly charged for money laundering during the 2008 war, when actually what he did was keep the Lari from collapsing. Also, we know from the Panama Papers that Bidzina, through shell companies registered in Panama, while his party was sabotaging the Anaklia deal and prosecuting Khazaradze, was investing in its competing port, Poti. And finally, Kremlin hates Anaklia because it is the best natural deepwater port in the Black Sea and would completely eclipse Russia's ports on the Black Sea. All that history aside, Gacharia and Khazaradze attended the proposed meeting and said that they would continue discussions. While neither side discussed the details, Khazaradze mentioned that several foundational topics need to be agreed upon before reaching a decision. Gacharia, on the other hand, stated that he already made all of his conditions clear to Khazaradze and is now waiting for an answer. These two parties unite, they have the potential to become the largest opposition party in Georgia. In other news, on Thursday the 12th, Eka Gigauri, Executive Director of Transparency International Georgia, testified at the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing about anti-NGO laws and other tools of democratic repression. Gigaudi stated that if Georgian democracy fails and the country returns to Russia's sphere of influence, it will negatively impact any chances for democratic development in the whole region. She also discussed the openly anti-Western rhetoric used by the Georgian government and the coordinated disinformation campaign aimed at weakening civil society. On Monday the 16th, Anthony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of State, announced a new package of sanctions targeting individuals in Georgia. This list includes people who are undermining democracy in the country. Visa restrictions will be imposed on more than 60 government officials and their family members. Separately, the Department of the Treasury sanctioned 4 individuals, placing financial and banking restrictions on them. One of them is Viad Ivanishvili, also known as Khareba, who is the head of the Department of Special Tasks in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Khareba was allegedly involved in organizing violence against protesters during the anti-Russian law protest. His deputy was also sanctioned. The 2 remaining individuals sanctioned are Konstantin Margoshia and Zurab Makharadze, who are leaders of the openly pro-Russian political organization Alt-Info. This far-right extremist group organized violent anti-LGBTQ plus protests. In sports news, Merab the Machine Ivanishvili has become the UFC's bantamweight champion by defeating the previous title holder, Sean O'Malley. He became the second Georgian to win a UFC championship title this year. Ilia Topuria holds the championship title in the UFC's featherweight division. In culture news, the biggest creative festival in the region, Add Black Seed 2024, began on Thursday the 12th. The event, which takes place in Batumi, is aimed at professionals in the marketing industry. Over the course of 3 days, participants attended presentations by industry leaders, panel discussions, workshops, and an award ceremony. There were competitions in 13 categories, including design, branding, and video advertisement. An international jury from 20 different countries picked the winner. Another festival started on Thursday the 19th. Data Fest Tbilisi is the biggest data festival in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. It's held for professionals who work in the data industry, startups, data analysis, AI engineers, and developers. Speakers included representatives of tech giants such as Google, Meta, Amazon, Canva, and Wix. The festival lasted 3 days and is taking place at the Pullman Hotel. Also on Thursday, an interesting event was held at the Georgia branch office of the Max Weber Foundation regarding the German Democratic Republic, or GDR's Stasi records. Very relevant for Georgia. Alexandra Tietze, the vice president of the German Federal Archives, gave a lecture entitled The Legacy of a Secret about how the German society dealt with the records that the GDR government collected by spying on its citizens for 40 years. And to close this edition, some news for Georgian film fans, especially those in the UK. 8th London Georgian Film Festival will kick off on the 2nd of October, commemorative of the 100th anniversary of the birth of the director and screenwriter Sergei Parajanov. Festival will open with his film The Color of Pomegranates. Festival was founded by the British Georgian Society in 2005. The organization's goal is to promote Georgian art, film, music, culture, archaeology, history, and business, as well as to strengthen ties between the UK and Georgia. Don't forget to check the link in the show notes for the festival's program and ticket reservations. And that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. We hope you're enjoying Georgia Update as much as we enjoy making it. Thoughts, questions, ideas? Send us an email at info@rorschach.com. Don't forget to subscribe on your go-to podcast platform. Nach vom Dies.